Transitions can be a great way to help a player out when they are going from one spot to another within a level. For example, if you are trying to teleport a player, it's a lot smoother to have your scene fade to black, teleport, and then have the whole scene fade back than it is to just blip and you're there. In the same instance, it's also much smoother to have these kind of transitions when you're having large sudden changes in the environment. For example, a boss suddenly enters the arena and you want something to help draw attention to all the changes in the environment. A fading transition can also help with that as well. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you exactly how you can fade an entire scene to black, and then you can fade that back into as it usually would be, very smoothly and very easily, and you can do whatever you would like in between. But before we go ahead and jump into that, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more just like this one, be sure to like and subscribe button down below. And with that, let's jump right into the video. All right, so let me go and show you how all of this functions. So this is a very simple, easy thing to do. All it takes is two sequences and a sequence actor in the scene. For this tutorial, I've tied up the fade to black and fade back to scene to my triggers. This isn't something that's going to be player controllable usually. So let me go and show you how this works real quick. So if I go and press my left trigger, everything fades to black. If I go and press my right trigger, I fade back to the scene. So it's very simple, very easy to do. And again, this isn't something that's usually going to be player controllable. Typically it's going to happen as something else is happening. For example, if I went to like teleport over, I'd probably do like a fade to black before it teleports me over. Then after it's finished, teleport, and then once I'm teleported over there, fade back into the scene. And I'd probably honestly make the whole transition a lot faster too. But anyways, that should kind of give you an idea of how something like this works. Again, this isn't something that's normally going to be player controllable. I didn't set this up so in a way where it's meant to be player controllable, so I can like repeatedly hit my left trigger and just keep on fading to black and fading to black and fading to black, you know, over and over and over again. Because usually this is going to be something that goes alongside something else. A level stream, a teleport, whatever. It'll go alongside something else. So anyways, let me go ahead and jump into the tutorial and I can go and show you how all of this functions. The first thing we need to do is we need a level sequence actor somewhere within our scene. This actor is going to run the sequences that we're going to use in order to fade everything from black, and then we're going to fade back into the scene. Once you have this level sequence actor in the scene, you also need to do one quick thing in the details panel. You need to make sure that in the details panel, our level sequence actor is set to pause at end. Reason for this is when we actually fade to black, if we don't have this set up, what will actually end up happening is our scene will still fade to black, but once it reaches that end, it's basically going to stop, and then rather than staying black, we're going to be able to see our scene as we usually would. So you need to make sure that this is set to pause at end so our entire scene will remain black once we reach that end. Next, we're going to need two sequences. So go ahead and jump in the content browser, and I'm going to create a new folder here called Sequences. Then in the sequences folder, we need to first create our first sequence. So if you don't know where to find the sequences, you can find this option under the animation tab when you right click it in the content browser. The first sequence we're going to go and set up here is going to be our fade our scene to black. So go and open up the sequence and then click Add Track Fade. Next, we're going to need two keys in our sequence. So on the right hand side, go ahead and we're going to first set the fade to 1.0. The second key we're going to set is going to set our fade to 0.0. And these keys can be spaced as far or as close together as you would like. Now, if you were paying attention to the level during this period of time, you may have actually noticed that our level actually started already doing that weird transition as we were adding in these keys. Now, if you actually go ahead and press play on this sequence, you should actually see that our level goes from what you would expect it to look like all the way to that solid black that you want it to be at when we're actually doing our transition. If you want for this transition to happen a little bit faster, you can move these keys together so that way they'll happen a little bit faster. And alternatively, if you would like to make this transition appear even longer, you can also spread this out a little bit as well. The way that the sequence runs is actually the speed it's going to run at when we are actually running our sequence in our VR pawn. So just keep that in mind as you are looking at this sequence and modifying it here. Next, go ahead and return to the content browser, and it's going to be a very similar situation for our second sequence. The only thing we need to do is create our second sequence, and then here we actually need to invert our fade scales. So we need to set from 0.0 to 1.0 rather than what we did in the previous sequence where we set from 1.0 to 0.0. Now again, if you were actually paying attention to the level, you should actually see if you press play on this sequence, you should now see it go from a solid black and then fade back so that we are able to see the scene itself. So it should allow for this entire transition to take place. We're basically splitting this into two parts. With our sequences all set up, we're now finally able to move on to the VR pawn. So for this tutorial, I'm simply going to set our fade to happen at the press of a button, but you may find that there are other instances where you want this fade to happen. For example, when you overlap with a box, or when you're about to begin some sort of transition level, some kind of level streaming, anything like that, you may find that you want to actually begin this, this fade process. But for this example, I'm just going to do this at a button. So I'm going to go ahead and hijack our trigger left and trigger right presses for this transition. After you go and remove the code that's already existing there for our trigger left and trigger right, we're simply going to need 3 simple blueprint nodes in order to set and start our sequences. The first one we're going to need is we're going to need to get actor of class to our level sequence. In this case, since we only have a single level sequence actor in our entire scene, we don't need to worry about sifting through or having a variable that contains our level sequence. If you have multiple sequences in your level, you may find that you need to sift through them, or maybe you need to store this specific level sequence as a variable so you can reference it later. But since we only have the one, I'm simply just going to find it in the scene. Next, go ahead and set the sequence. Here you're going to want to set whichever sequence you want to run. In this case, I'm going to fade to black with my left trigger. Then finally, we need to get the sequence player from our level sequence, and then we're going to tell our sequence player itself to play. Once you have these 3 nodes in place, you're pretty much all done, and that first sequence is going to play. Now for our second trigger, I'm simply going to copy all 3 of these nodes. I'm going to go ahead and bring it down to our trigger right, and this time we're going to fade back into the scene. With that, our fading transition is now entirely complete. With this, we're able to simply transition our entire level so it all fades to black, and then we're able to go from black and fade back into the scene. It's really that simple. With that, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe button down below. I also want to give a shout out to my Patreon supporters. And with that, I'll see you in the next reality.